At 3:33 in the morning, on the last night I ever wore a headset, line 4 rang. I answered it, and the voice on the other end was mine. Calm, professional, reading out an address like it wanted me to write it down. My daughter was asleep inside that house. But none of that will make sense unless I start with the clock. So let me start with the clock. My name is Ray. For 6 years, I worked the night desk at County Dispatch in Harlan Falls. If you've never heard of Harlan Falls, that's fine. Nobody has. The mill closed before I was born, and the town's been quietly bleeding out ever since. About 3,000 people, 1 diner, 1 pharmacy, 1 traffic light that blinks yellow after 9. Dispatch was in the basement of the old sheriff's office. Concrete walls, no windows, 1 desk, 1 console, 3 phone lines, and a coffee maker older than me. 10 at night to 6 in the morning, it was just me down there, underneath the whole sleeping town. I took the job because of my daughter, Emmy. She was 7 that year. Her mother wasn't in the picture anymore, so on my shift nights, Emmy slept at my mum's place over on Carver Street. There's a crayon drawing taped to the edge of my monitor. A stick man with a headset, holding a phone the size of his whole body. Underneath, in letters that lean like they're tired, it says, "My dad saves people." Every night at 10:30, I'd call my mum's landline, and she'd set the phone on Emmy's pillow for 1 minute so I could hear her breathe. I want you to remember that drawing, and that 1 minute. Everything I did for those. 2 things about that basement were wrong, and everybody knew about both, and nobody talked about either. The first was the clock. A round, white wall clock, the industrial kind you see in schools. It ran exactly 9 minutes fast. Not 8, not 10, 9. The county replaced it twice while I worked there. Both times within a week, the new clock had drifted exactly 9 minutes ahead and stopped drifting. Maintenance stopped coming. The day shift guys set their watches by it and called it close enough. The second was line 4. Lines 1 through 3 were the county's emergency lines. Line 4 was older, a beige desk phone from sometime in the 80s, yellowed like a smoker's ceiling, sitting at the far end of the console. It wasn't connected to anything. The phone company pulled that circuit in '94. I've seen the work order. Taped underneath it was a strip of paper, so old the ink had gone brown. "Do not answer line 4. Nobody remembered who taped it there. You'd ask, and people would just find somewhere else to look. After a while, you stopped asking. After a longer while, you stopped seeing the phone at all. It became furniture. For 5 years and 7 months, that was my whole story. Quiet town, fast clock, dead phone. Then, on a Tuesday in late October, at 2:47 in the morning, line 2 rang. A woman on Delford Road, voice tight and high, saying her kitchen was on fire, the curtains had caught, it was spreading to the hall. She gave the address twice. Good caller. Clear. I rolled our only night engine, and I stayed on the line until she stopped answering me. The engine got there in 6 minutes. The house was dark. No smoke, no fire. A confused man in pajamas opened the door with a baseball bat, and behind him the crew could see straight into the kitchen. Nothing. Cold stove, curtains hanging still. I logged it as a false alarm, and my hands were already moving to the next thing, because that's the job. And then, at 2:56, 9 minutes after the first call, line 1 rang. Same address on Delford Road, same woman's voice, same words almost to the syllable. The curtains, the hallway. Except this time, behind her voice, I could hear it. The crackle, the smoke alarm. The fire was real, and it was eating the kitchen exactly the way she'd described it 9 minutes before it existed. The engine was still parked out front. They knocked the fire down in minutes. Family got out, nobody hurt. On paper, the fastest structure fire response in county history. I sat in that basement until dawn, playing both recordings back to back. Same voice, same breaths. I pulled the phone records for the first call. It came from a number that was disconnected in 2009. A payphone, one that used to stand outside the mill gate. They tore it out of the concrete 15 years ago. I didn't tell anybody. You hear that and you think, why didn't he tell anybody? Because I was a single father with the only steady paycheck I'd ever had, and the words, "The fire called me before it started," are how you lose a paycheck like that. So I did what the town did with the clock and the phone. I found somewhere else to look. But it kept happening. 2 weeks later, a crash out on Route 6, called in by a trucker's voice from a dead cell number, 9 minutes before 2 cars touched. A month after that, an overdose on Millbank Avenue, reported by the victim's own mother. 9 minutes before she found him, and her real call came in. Hysterical, word for word the same. I started keeping a folder. Off the books. Times, numbers, voices. Every early call came from a line that didn't exist anymore. Everyone was 9 minutes ahead. The calls didn't predict the emergency, you understand. They were the emergency, arriving early. An echo, but backwards. One night I went digging in the archive room, all those dead file boxes from the 70s and 80s. And in a box marked Weather, misfiled or hidden, I found incident logs going back 40 years. Same pattern, same 9 minutes. Some dispatcher 2 generations before me had written one word in the margin, over and over. Echoes. So I called the only person who'd worked that basement longer than the file box. Marlene. She trained me my first month, then retired to grow tomatoes at the edge of town. I asked her straight, am I losing my mind, or does the county get its emergencies twice? The line went so quiet I thought she'd hung up. Then she said, you log them, you thank God for them, and you follow the rules. She gave me 4. Log every echo, but never show the log to anyone. Never act on an echo before the real call comes in. Never tell a caller what you already know. And the last one she said slowly, the way you talk to a child near a stove. Never answer line 4. I said the phone wasn't even connected. She said that's right. I said the clock in the basement runs 9 minutes fast and maintenance can't fix it. And Marlene said, honey, that clock isn't fast. It's on their time. She hung up. We never spoke about it again. I wish that were true. You'll see in a minute why it isn't. For almost a year, I followed her rules, and I will tell you something I'm not proud of. It was the best year of my life, because the echoes made me good. I knew which nights to keep the engine crew awake. I knew when to have the bridge to County General clear. I wasn't acting early, not exactly. I was just ready. Harlan Falls had the response times of a city 10 times its size, and a drawing on my monitor said my dad saves people. And some nights I'd look at it and think, kid, you have no idea. Then in March, the echo line rang, and it was about Mr. Abel. Abel ran the pharmacy, filled Emmy's antibiotics, knew everybody's dosage by heart. The echo was his own voice, slurred, saying he was on the floor behind the counter and his left arm had gone strange. Heart attack, 9 minutes out. The rule said, wait for the real call. And I looked at that beige phone at the end of the console, and I thought, the rules belong to whoever isn't watching a man die. I called our ambulance for a readiness drill, parked them at the corner of Main, 60 seconds from the pharmacy door, 2 minutes before Abel's heart even knew what it was about to do. When his real call came, I had paramedics through his door in under a minute. They told him later that timing like that was 1 in a million. He's alive today. I want that on the record. I saved his life. Hold on to that because of what it brought. The next night, the echoes changed. The first one was a barn fire out at the Kessler place. Big voice, lots of detail. 9 minutes I waited. The real call never came. I drove past the Kessler farm on my way home, and the barn stood there in the morning fog, whole, dewy, not so much as a scorch mark. An echo that lied. There'd never been one. Not in my folder, not in 40 years of the weather box. They came more often after that. Wrecks that never happened. Drownings at a quarry nobody visited. The voices were getting, I don't have a better word for this, interested. The first echoes had been flat, like recordings. These ones breathed. These ones paused when I typed, like they could hear my keyboard, like the call was checking whether I was listening. I understood it slowly, and then all at once, the way you understand a cliff edge. The echoes had never been a gift. They were terms. 9 minutes of warning in exchange for staying out of it. A ledger kept by something patient. And when I parked that ambulance 2 minutes early outside Abel's pharmacy, I hadn't saved a life. I'd borrowed one. And then it was April 2nd, and at exactly 3:33 in the morning, for the first time in 30 years, line 4 rang. A phone with no wires rang. It doesn't sound like other phones. I need you to believe me. It rings low and slow, like a bell underwater, like the sound is coming up through the concrete instead of out of the phone. The first night, I sat with my back against the far wall until it stopped. 40 rings. I counted. It rang the next night at 3:33. And the next. 9 nights in a row, while I sat there not answering, watching a strip of brown ink under a dead phone like it was the only law left in the world. On the 9th night, it didn't ring. And I am ashamed of how grateful I was. Because at 3:41, line 1 rang instead. A neighbor. Real call, real line, real night air behind her voice. There were lights on at Marlene's place, she said, and the front door had been standing open for an hour, and Marlene didn't answer when she called into the dark. No echo had warned me. Not 9 minutes, not 9 seconds. I broke every rule there was. I sent the deputy, the ambulance, the engine, everything Harlan Falls had, and I stayed on with the deputy while he went room to room, saying her name into that open house. He found her in the kitchen. She was gone, and she'd been gone a while. And here is the part I will be carrying when they bury me. The coroner put her time of death at 3:32. 1 minute before line 4 had started ringing. 9 nights earlier. Her phone was on the counter, plugged in, charged. One unsent message sitting in the drafts, addressed to me. 4 words. Stop answering them early. I didn't go home that morning. I sat in my car in the parking lot and I shook, because I finally saw the shape of it. The echoes warn. You receive. That's the whole deal. That's all the basement was ever for. I had reached out and changed the outcome, and a ledger somewhere had gone out of balance, and Marlene, who'd kept the rules for 40 years, had paid the difference. Borrowed time gets collected. It just doesn't get collected from the borrower. You'd think I would have quit that day. I didn't. One more night. I told myself it was for the town. It wasn't for the town. It was because line 4 knew where I lived either way. April 11th, 3:33 in the morning. It rang. And this time I stood up and I crossed the room and I picked it up because Marlene was dead and the rules had died with her, and I would rather hear the thing than spend one more night being circled by it. I said, 911, what's your emergency? And my own voice answered me. Not similar. Mine. The voice off my own training tapes, calm, measured, dispatcher flat, and it said, caller is reporting a child welfare emergency, 211 Carver Street. My mother's house. Emmy. The voice gave the cross street. It gave the gate code my mother uses, and then it stopped being a report and spoke to me, in me, the way your own thoughts sound at 4 in the morning. You answered, Ray. You owe a call. Time of incident, 9 minutes from now. People ask what the scariest part was when I tell a version of this story with the ending filed off. The scariest part was how polite it was. It wasn't a threat, it was an invoice. But here's what it didn't count on. I had been the night desk for 6 years, and for 1 year I had been the best dispatcher in the state, and it had taught me itself what 9 minutes can do. I sent everything, both deputies, the engine, the ambulance staged at Maine, and I had my mother on her cell by the second ring. I told her, "Don't ask, take Emmy, go out the back, go to the Hendersons, run." And my mother, God keep that woman, did not ask. I listened to her cross the yard with my daughter over her shoulder, Emmy half asleep and complaining about the cold, the most beautiful sound I have ever heard in my life. At what would have been the 9-minute mark, every porch light on Carver Street went out at once, just for a second, like the street blinked. The deputies walked that house attic to cellar and found nothing. No intruder, no fire, no gas leak. Nothing except for one thing, and I only know it because my mother told me a week later, once she'd decided I could take it. The phone in Emmy's room, the landline she leaves on the pillow some nights, was off the hook. And the receiver was warm. I typed my resignation at 5 in the morning and slid it under the sheriff's door, and I drove to Carver Street and held my daughter until the sun was all the way up. The county hired a new night dispatcher inside of a week. Young guy, eager. I took him for coffee because somebody once did the same for me, and I gave him the rules like they were coffee break trivia. Log them. Don't act early. Don't tell the callers. Don't answer line 4. He laughed. Then he saw my face and he stopped. I drive past the old sheriff's office some nights when I can't sleep, which is most nights. The basement window glows that same dirty yellow. The clock down there still runs 9 minutes fast, and nobody fixes it, and now you and I both know that nobody ever will. It's not broken. It's the only honest clock in town. As for me, my cell phone rings some nights. 3:33 on the dot. No caller ID, no voicemail. My new place doesn't even have a landline, and it rings anyway, from somewhere in the dark of the house. I haven't answered. Not yet. This was file 001 of the night shift files. There are more accounts in this archive, and they are not getting easier to read. If you were here for this one, the archive will be waiting.